Okay, hello everybody. My name is Kasie Harriet, and we are at the Learn to Hunt Muzzleloader class. So you guys are at the right place, hopefully. Um, oh yeah, we're gonna close our door. So once again, my name is Kasie Harriet. I'm the R3 coordinator for Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation and National Wild Turkey Federation. R3 stands for Recruitment, Retention, and Reactivation. So essentially, I help to create programs and initiatives that get people outside hunting. Today we have our expert big game biologist, Dallas Barber here, who's going to be going over the muzzleloader presentation. And then we have Jacob Harriet, the Lincoln County Game Warden, on call here, and he is going to go over regulations as well. And then we're going to open it up to a question and answer portion of the at the very end. So if you guys stumble across questions that you might have, type them in the chat box as we're going along. And then I will field them at the end. And if everybody can remember to keep yourself muted during this time so we don't have any interruptions, that would be fantastic. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Dallas.
Yeah.
You can share the screen and do all that.
Like Casey had said, my name is Dallas Barber. I'm the big game biologist for the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife. So I take care of all of our deer, elk, and antelope species across the state. Can somebody give me a thumbs up if they can see our presentation today? Jacob says yes. There we go. So again, we're going over learn to muzzleloader hunt. Really, the way that I'm kind of approaching this, there's not too terribly much on actual muzzleloaders themselves. With it being just a couple of days before season starts here, if you don't know about a muzzleloader, this is not the time to start. So I'm hoping that a lot of you have already made yourself familiar with a muzzleloader, but we're going to kind of go over the purpose behind the season, when it is, and some tips and tactics to maybe help you be successful in the field. So this is a wonderful time to be in the woods. As far as, from a biological standpoint, we're really just starting to see an increase in deer movement and activity with a lot of pre-rut behavior. So focusing on things like doe bedding areas, scrape lines, rub lines, things like that would be a great place to start. The way to find those is to get on the ground. So, get out in the areas that you're going to be hunting, do some scouting, and just scout for sign. So that pre-rut behavior is actually triggered by photo period. So just like the rut, it's not triggered by the weather, it's not triggered by the moon, anything like that. It's triggered by photo period, which is the amount of time that there is daylight throughout the day. So every year it's going to be the same time. The peak of the rut here in our state, about November 8th through the 15th. So this last week of October into the very beginning of November is a great time to be in the woods. Like I said, it's really important to become comfortable with loading and unloading your muzzleloader before hunting season. So again, these are all just checklist type things to be aware of. Know how your muzzleloader works and the safety features on that muzzleloader. So is this a hammer fire muzzleloader? Is it internal components where you actually have a working safety like you do on a shotgun or on a rifle? And make sure that you've practiced. So this isn't something you can just pick up off the shelf and go hunt with. Make sure that you've zeroed your muzzleloader and understand your limitations as a hunter and as a shooter. Some tips for stuff like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to have much rain in the forecast, but if it is something that you're going to be dealing with, a lot of people will just throw some tape over the tip of their barrel to keep water or moisture out from their powder load. That's a huge tip I can give you from personal experience. If you are not mindful of that, you could have a deer walk by and your muzzleloader not fire because your powder's wet. So season dates. This is one of the biggest questions I get every year. Like, June, July come around and people are calling me asking, when's muzzleloader season? When's rifle season? Well, our seasons are set by Title 800. So it's going to be the same regardless. There is some difference based on the calendar roll, so how that month sets up. But every single muzzleloader season is going to start the fourth Saturday of October and continue for 9 days. So from here on out, you'll never have to guess when muzzleloader starts. We can tell you when it is for 2035. If you just go to that year calendar, look at the fourth Saturday in October, and that'll be opening day for muzzleloader. So this year, the way that the calendar falls, October 26th through November 3rd is when muzzleloader season's going to be. We're going to steal a little bit of Jacob's thunder. So talking about just some very basic requirements, hunter orange. So this is not optional. This is a requirement All hunters participating in antelope, bear, deer, or elk season using a firearm must wear both a head covering and an outer garment, totaling 400 square inches of hunter orange. Now, I don't think that that Jacob's going to be pulling out a tape measure or anything, doing any calculations for that 400 inches. It's just wear a jacket, wear a vest, wear a hat, and you should be good to go. Archers during this time, just another little tidbit, they are an or clause. So they have to wear an orange head covering or a garment above the waistline. Again, camo orange is legal, and this is for your safety. This is something where there are a lot of people out in the woods, especially in areas where land holdings are a little smaller. Um, it could be a problem. You know, this is something as simple as throwing a hat and a vest on can help save your life. Bag limits, very simple here. 4 deer, no more than one may be antlered. Harvest of antlerless mule deer is prohibited. So if you're in part of the western state where mule deer exist, we cannot shoot antlerless mule deer with a muzzleloader. And then just be mindful of what antlerless deer zone you're in. So as far as harvest of those go, zone one's closed to antlerless deer harvest. 2, 7, and 8, you could fill your entire muzzleloader bag limit with antlerless deer. 3, 4, 5, 6, and 9, you can harvest 2, and in zone 10, you can harvest 1. So here is an example of that antlerless deer map. If you want to study this further, it's on page 37 in our regs. So just take a look at that, know exactly where you're at. It's all divided by highways, so there shouldn't be any sort of guessing as far as where the property you hunt lies on. Some continued new stuff for this season, new licensing requirements for the 24-25 season. No longer do you have to purchase individual tags or deer licenses for each one of the deer that you harvest. As a resident, you just have to have a resident hunting license and a resident deer muzzleloader license. That one resident deer muzzleloader license includes your full bag limit for muzzleloader as long as you're not exceeding the 6 deer combined season limit. So where to go? This is a big question that I get. The ODWC has a ton of different WMAs that are open for deer muzzleloader season. So okay, I'm going to stop sharing and then I'm going to go back to share screen. Casey's having to walk me through this. Okay. So you guys should be seeing our homepage of our website. Is that correct? Thumbs up from someone? Yeah, okay. So this is the easiest way to find out where you can go hunting. So if you click hunting, hunting resources, and then scroll down just a little bit to deer. Right here it says public deer hunting opportunities. So we're wanting to look to see what areas are open for muzzleloader. So if you click muzzleloader, it gives you a breakdown of every WMA that's open to muzzleloader season in some way, shape, or form based by region. So for example, let's say that we are down, that'd be like down kind of by the Durant area. We're gonna look at Hickory Creek. So click on that individual WMA page, and this will look the same for every single WMA that you saw listed. The thing I want you to keep in mind is this area specific hunting regulations. When you click that, it then shows everything that you need to know about particular regulations. So, closed season. So holiday antlerless deer gun is going to be closed on Hickory Creek. Same as statewide seasons. You've got youth deer, archery season, dove, all of these different things are open. Seasons with special restrictions. So deer muzzleloader has a restriction, and along with deer gun, they're closed to antlerless hunting after opening day. So you can harvest an antlerless deer on Hickory Creek on opening day, but after that, antlerless deer harvest is prohibited. So if you are trying to figure out where to go, you can go back to this page based by region and just start clicking through some of them, find out what one's closest to you, and you can tackle it that way. So we'll go back here and then to share again, back into our slideshow. There we go. Okay, so again, like what a time to be in the woods. Like if I were to only be able to hunt for, 5 or 6 days a year, regardless of what method, these next probably 8 to 10 days would be when I would want to be in the woods. More times than not, we have some cooler temperatures to hunt in. This year, it's not looking to be the case. Um, that pre-rut activity, again, we're really starting to see deer on their feet. Bucks are starting to cruise to find doe bedding areas. They're kind of taking inventory of what's in the area. Rub lines are going to be incredibly active. Scrape lines are going to be incredibly active as bucks ramp up activity for the rut. Food sources this time of year. Deer are really heavily focusing on hard mast acorns. So again, this time of year, I get a lot of calls, a lot of emails of people saying, man, my trail cameras are dead. Like I don't have pictures of deer at all on them on my corn feeder. And I always ask them, well, are you in an area where there are a lot of oak trees? Well, yeah. So your deer don't want corn, they want acorns. So just something to keep in the back of your mind is, if you're out scouting on a piece of property and run across a big oak flat, start taking some, mental pictures of that or remember where it's at because this time of year is when that's going to be on fire.
I've also had experience right now with persimmons.
Yeah.
Persimmons are starting to fall, and if you find one persimmon tree, you find many.
Bunch of them.
And so if you can get a hold of those, on my properties that I hunt, deer hit those
Yeah.
before acorns even, but they're just more limited.
It all depends on when they fall. So
Yeah.
obviously they don't
Good.
serve us much good in the tree, and there's a really big kind of drastic, dynamic point to that where just a couple miles away, all the persimmons can be on the ground. Where you hunt, they still might all be in the tree. Like here on our area on Arcadia, all of our persimmons are still up in the tree, and the ones that are even low enough to hang down and pick them, they're still rock hard. So we're still a little bit off from persimmons here, but that might not be the case where you guys are hunting. Again, so just go back to that food sources. Acorns really starting to kind of be king here, late October. And agriculture is starting to play a little bit of a role in patterning for deer. So by this time of year, most of our wheat crop has been drilled in the ground. Some of it has started to make an appearance with the drought conditions we're experiencing across a lot of the state. We're probably a couple weeks behind on that. But just something to keep in mind that if your farmers in the area did get wheat in the ground and you have been blessed with a little bit of rain, that's starting to come up, and deer really love to eat wheat crop. So this isn't really pertaining strictly to muzzleloader hunting. This is something that pertains to every style of hunting, but it's something that should be, at the forefront of your thought process when you're out and about in the field is playing the wind. So a deer's nose is its best defense against predators, and you're not going to beat a deer's nose, regardless of what products you use, products you try, scent lock, scent spray, washing your clothes and certain things. You still need to have the wind in your favor. So even though your ranges are a little bit more extended with this muzzleloader season as opposed to archery equipment, make sure that you're staying downwind of suspected deer travel routes. And then last but not least, shot placement. This is something that applies, with all methods of take is you're really aiming for those vitals. So right behind the shoulder is where we're wanting to put our crosshairs. We're wanting to have a good slow trigger squeeze to ensure an accurate shot. That's given us a good chance at hitting, heart, lung, liver are kind of the big three that you're looking for there as far as shot placement goes. And then just making sure that you're taking an ethical shot. So as broadside as possible and as close as you're comfortable shooting. And that's all I have for you guys. So with all of that being said, we can make this as interesting as you guys want because I work for you and I'm here to answer your questions. We can probably kick it over to Jacob, who's going to cover some of the regulations.
Yeah, and I also asked him to cover like a little bit of like muzzleloader basics, as in just the anatomy of a muzzleloader, the mechanisms of it, the firing mechanism, and everything else. Just as a baseline, because we did say this is a muzzleloader class, and I didn't specify just deer, but it was a given that it was deer. But I want to make sure we cover that, and we have plenty of time to do so. So, all right,
Do
Jacob,
I
over to
do
you.
I need to go get a muzzle loader or
You're pretty. Yeah, I was. That's why I was texting you.
I didn't know what ML meant. So
Oh, I was trying to be quick,
I,
but
I, sp I speak English, not text.
okay.
But
This is my
so
husband. If you notice some sort of rapport here, it's because he's my husband.
Oh yeah.
Just do the
But
regulations and you can talk over it.
okay, maybe y'all can answer questions. I can run in and grab one.
Perfect.
Okay, guys. So Dallas did a pretty good job covering the major stuff. Just I'd kind of like to just touch on some of the things I'm seeing in the field right now, and then just come some of the basic stuff. So I've been getting like 10 to 20 calls a day about the new license change, and basically, like Dallas covered it, briefly. But when you buy your resident muzzleloader license, that covers all the deer that you can harvest during muzzleloader season. But in the past, you used to have to buy an individual license for each deer. You don't have to do that now, and my phone has been getting wore out on that. So make sure you understand that you buy that resident muzzleloader license, you're good to go. Same thing with non-residents. You have to have that non-resident muzzleloader license. Now, you also have to have your annual license. So, say I'm a resident, I'll buy my annual hunting license, then I'll buy my Oklahoma muzzleloader license. And then non-residents would be annual hunting license and non-resident muzzleloader license. But it's pretty easy. It made it really, really simple. Now with that, you still do have to tag your deer. So after you harvest a deer, the first thing you're supposed to do is put a field tag on it. A field tag can be anything as long as it has your name, license number, time and date of harvest. I'm cheap. I usually use duct tape and a Sharpie. But make sure you're doing that. That's the first thing you're supposed to do. Then after you do that, you have 24 hours to check that animal in on our online system. You can do that through our app or our website. A lot of people now will just check them in as they harvest them. So say I harvest a deer, I check it in on my phone. I am 100% perfectly fine with if you just write your confirmation number on that deer tag, your handmade deer tag, and put it on the deer. I'm good to go with that. But you might consult your wardens in your whatever county you're hunting in to make sure they're fine with that as well. That tag needs to stay on that deer until it gets to its place of final destination. So if you are processing it yourself, well, then that's your house. If you're taking it to a processor, that processor is going to have that confirmation number, or he should not take the deer. After that, have that confirmation number on your cooler when you get it back to your house. Once it's to your house and you're ready to eat it, as long as you got it checked in, you're in good shape there. Also, we need to know our bag limit. So Dallas, that doe table that Dallas put up there is really good. But he covered that. I'm not going to talk about it a whole lot. He really covered most of the reg stuff. The hunter orange, I see that a lot. So every year I give my first group I catch a warning. And so I've already found my first group this year not wearing orange. I gave them a warning. So anybody else after this is going to get an orange ticket. That is for your safety. If you think you're the only one hunting your property, you are probably wrong. People trespass like crazy, especially in my county. It's just a constant issue. So an antlered deer is any deer with antler above 3 inches from the natural hairline. If you shoot a spike that only has little nubs that are 2 inches long, that you can actually check that in as an antlerless deer. I saw a question pop up. You do need to have proof of sex on that. Every game warden is going to be different on the scenario on that. If you quarter it out in the woods and you take a photo of it and I know it, I'm okay with that. Some guys will want you to keep either the head or not with it. But pretty simple stuff. Usually it just comes down to common sense. It's always good to talk to your game warden in that county. So on the second and third page of the regulations, it has like a list of every game warden by county. Please find that page, or you can Google Oklahoma game wardens. It'll pop up. Find your local game warden, save your number, or save his number in your phone, and just have that on hand. Other than that, there's not a lot to it. You have to have at least a 40 caliber muzzleloader for it to be legal. A muzzleloader has to be loaded from the muzzle. So they make, some fancy muzzleloaders now that all load from the back, kind of like a cartridge. It's not a muzzleloader unless that bullet goes down the barrel. I've got a lot of calls on these fire stick muzzleloaders, and that's basically instead of pouring the powder or putting your pellets down the barrel, you actually put the powder in the back, the muzzle, the bullet itself down the front, and that's legal as long as that bullet goes down the barrel. Don't shoot off the road. That's pretty self-explanatory. During any firearm season, you cannot hunt feral hogs at night, so be cautious of that. If you're a landowner and you're having really bad pig issues, we can still issue a permit for that time of year, but it needs to be a pretty significant issue. I've been having lots of calls this year. I mean, people have just been crazy. I've been shooting off the road, trespassing, cutting fences. It's been a wild year already. Like Dallas was talking about food sources, our wheat crops are way, way behind right now. So all your green forage, those deer are usually hitting on once it gets cold. They're just not hitting on those right now. For example, I've been working spotlighters where they've been hitting these green fields, and there's not very many of them around. So the farmers are really going to get hard by deer because there's the only green field, for several miles. Well, once those acorns drop, those deer are nowhere to be seen. Those deer are in the woods eating acorns. They could care less about that green food right now. And same with corn. They're not going to hit corn if they have acorns to go eat. Uh, Other than that, check them in on our online system. It's pretty easy. You have issues with it, you can always call. For kids, the youth super license covers everything they need for muzzleloader hunting. It covers everything they need for deer in Oklahoma, so they don't have to buy a specific license other than that youth super license. That's a good deal for them as well. Other than that, I don't have a whole lot. I can run and grab a muzzleloader if I need to.
Yeah, you do that and grab the inline and then the old school one.
Okay. Yep. You guys answer questions. I'll be right back.
All right.
All right. So first question, well, more of a statement. I didn't know that we even had elk in Oklahoma.
Yes. So elk are found pretty much statewide now in Oklahoma. Obviously, populations are going to vary based on where you're at. The majority of our elk population is going to be down in the special Southwest elk zone. So that's Caddo, Comanche, and Kiowa counties down around the Wichita Mountains. We've also got a pretty well-established herds in Dewey County, all throughout the Panhandle. The east side of the state would include, down around Ardmore, so south central. East side up around Tahlequah, down around Push. So areas kind of across the state sprinkled in, but it's really getting to the point where when people report an elk to me, I'm really not all that surprised anymore. The next one, is it required to retain evidence of sex? Yes. So always make sure you retain evidence of sex. The best way to cover both your bases on that is going to be to keep the head intact, and then to also try to keep sexual organs intact. So either that penis sheath, testicles, or the udders off of a doe. So he says, we like to quarter in the field. Do we need to keep the tag on the ice chest until we get it home? Yeah. So if you're quartering your deer in the field and it's all going into an ice chest, just make sure that you keep your field tag with that ice chest or with that meat until it's reached its final destination. So be that the processor, or if you are the processor, your house. Someone asked the license chart and exemptions, so on. Lifetime license holders are exempt from purchasing a muzzleloader license for deer hunting. Is that correct? Yes. So your lifetime will cover anything and everything deer, especially. Hunting on private property in Zone 10, do I still have to follow the one doe, one buck tag limit? Yes. So regardless of what zone you're in, you can only harvest one antlered deer statewide with a muzzleloader. So it doesn't matter if you're hunting in zone 2, 7, 8, 3, 5, 9, 7, 10, any of them. You can only kill one buck statewide. Now, that antlerless doe limit is based on what zone you're in. So if you're hunting in zone 10, you can only harvest one antlerless deer with a muzzleloader, but that doesn't mean that you can't travel to other areas of the state to continue to fill the rest of your bag limit with muzzleloader, if that makes sense. So Jacob's back with weapon in hand.
I'm back.
We're gonna let him go through a couple of these different kinds of muzzleloaders to let you guys know what they look like and how they operate. If you guys will, just keep punching in questions there in the chat box, and we will get to him whenever he's done.
All right. So I'm going to start with kind of your more common muzzleloader. This isn't considered an inline muzzleloader. They actually break open. So these are pretty much what most people hunt with anymore. They're very accurate. They're very dependable. So this silver cap, you can actually unscrew, but it doesn't really matter. So muzzleloaders, by definition, we're going to load that from the muzzle. So the way these work, we want to make sure that we do not have a primer on these. We treat all guns like they're loaded, but in the back of this right here, that's where you would actually put like a percussion cap primer. It would stick in there. That's what makes a spark when you shoot the gun. So for safety wise, anytime we're messing with this, we do not want to have a primer in there because that's what makes the spark. So coming back to that, so how we load these, we're going to put our powder in, whether that is a pelletized powder or loose powder. We're going to put that in our barrel, let that go down, and then we're going to get our usually they come in with a sabot. It's a bullet with a wad, usually prepackaged on there. We're going to stick that on there, and then you have your rod. They make ball starters as well. If you want to use a ball starter, they work really well, but This is going to come in. We're going to push our bullet down, and it's going to go all the way down in there. Now, it is important to mark your ramrod. So I have a couple lines. I don't know if you can see it on here. I have a loaded line and I have an unloaded line on this gun. Now, with this muzzleloader, if it's unloaded, the rod pretty much goes all the way in it, and you can't. It just is even with the barrel. So you can see that rod is all the way in there. That is an unloaded gun. When it's loaded, it's going to stick out to right there. That's where my line is. So that's important because if you have space in between your bullet and your powder, you have a barrel obstruction, and it can actually cause these guns to blow up, and the explosion will come out the easiest point, which is usually the breech or even the side of the barrel sometimes. So we want to be real cautious with that. We are loading these from the barrel. Like I said, we don't want to have a primer in there, but it's also good practice just to not point these things at you, just like any other gun. I know it's a little different because you're actually having to put that powder and stuff in there, but still don't put it at your face. I've seen a lot of guys shoot the top of their hats off because they're not doing things wisely. These things are super accurate. They do have scopes on them. Most of them do now. This is actually built where you can use scope or iron sights. So the scope sits high enough that you can actually look down the barrel and use your iron sights, which is pretty handy as well. Just like any other gun, you need to sight it in. The main difference in muzzleloaders and regular firearms is they get much dirtier, so we need to clean them more. Usually when I'm shooting a muzzleloader, 2-3 shots, you probably need to clean it or you're going to start losing some accuracy. Also, you don't want to go shoot these things and then just go put them in your safe or put them in your closet without cleaning them, because the black powder is very corrosive. Now, the powder that you buy in modern rifle cartridges is much different than actual black powder. So you need to specify that. If you put the granulized powder that they use for rifle cartridges, it will actually blow these guns up. So make sure whatever powder you're using, be it pelletized or powder, actual loose powder, that it is made for muzzle loaders. But that's about it. So the good thing about these is if you need to unload this gun, you can actually unscrew the silver part and then take your ramrod and you can push that ammunition and powder out, which is super nice. And the other style, you cannot unload them without just shooting them off. But keep them clean, keep them sighted in. It's a great way to get out and enjoy the woods. Another big plus to muzzleloaders, if you buy a rifle, you can only hunt 16 days out of the year, minus the holiday antlerless season. But your normal rifle season, you hunt 16 days. With this muzzleloader, you can hunt all of muzzleloader season, and you can still use this muzzleloader during regular rifle season. They're much cheaper. You can buy them at 18. You can buy them over the counter without a background check. So like a younger guy can go to Walmart if he's 18 and buy it and not have to jump through all the hoops, which is nice. They are single shot, of course. You shoot it, you have to reload it. But they're super good ways to get in the woods. And like Dallas said, it is prime time to be in the woods right now.
Hey, you might mention that when sometimes, like Dallas kind of touched on it earlier, if it's moist outside and your hammer hits that primer and your load doesn't go off, that potentially it could be delayed.
Yep.
There can be a delay in that, a couple of second delay, so you don't want to just immediately go, what the heck, and turn it to the side or do something silly with it. Wait for a little bit, because that could go off and it could be a delay. Or another time, like Dallas mentioned, it could just be a little too moist in there. So had a situation happen where it was a wet evening and mine didn't go off, and all I had to do was pull that primer out. Unfortunately, the deer were staring right at me, and there's a whole lot of motion to take a primer out and put another one in, but it dried it enough on that little bit of a spark that it had to the next primer actually set the load off. So you can speak on that a little bit more if you want.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of walk through how these work. So basically, you put that percussion cap primer in the back of this. It's a 209 primer. It's the same primer they put in shotgun shells. You put that in there, you close it up. Once it's loaded, you pull your hammer back, or when you shoot, you pull the trigger, that hammer is going to go forward, hit that primer. That's going to make a spark, which that spark travels through a little bitty pinhole and ignites that powder. If there is something in the way of that pinhole, it can block that spark. But a lot of times that primer, like she was saying, will have enough to either dry out that powder if it's damp or blow out any blockages there are. Now, that being said, it is like a fire, basically. So when you shoot that fire can sit there and smolder, and it might burn through any sort of obstructions. So you can't have a hang fire where you pull the trigger and instead of getting a boom, you get a boom, and it's a little bit delayed. So it's always important to, if you pull it, it doesn't make a big boom, just that primer goes off. You want to hold on target because there is a chance that is delayed. After it does not go off, it's always a good idea if you're in a safe environment, do so, or if the deer is still there, try to, just break it open real easy, pop it up, put that old primer out, put the new one in, and then try another shot. If that doesn't work, give it a little bit of time, but you can always unscrew that back cap and push that powder and stuff out of there. A lot of times it's due to moisture or being dirty. Is kind of what I found. But yeah, that's a good point, Casey.
Hey, one more thing I thought about here. There are obviously regulations that pertain to transporting weapons. Can you explain a little bit what you expect to see, considering an unloaded muzzleloader for transportation? Like if I take my
Yeah.
percussion cap out, is that considered unloaded, or do you want me to see, taking the whole load and powder completely out of the weapon?
No, so that's a good question, and that's good for not only legally for transporting, but also for safety. So we do not want to transport these things with those percussion caps in there. So normally, how I do it, I'll only load my gun one time a season. So I will put my powder, I'll put my ammunition, be a ball or a sabot, I'll put that in there, and then to be considered unloaded for transportation, I just take that percussion cap out. Without a spark, that powder is not going to go off, so it's completely legal. To leave that powder and bullet in here as long as that primer's not in it. And same for when you're walking into the woods or if you're on any sort of rough terrain or going over fences, it's always a good idea to just to pull that percussion cap out, keep them in your pocket or something along that lines, because that percussion cap is what makes it go off. A lot of muzzleloaders do not have safeties. So, this is a loose hammer back here. If that was to hit hard enough and that primer was in there, it can make your gun go off. But if that primer's not in there, the chances of this gun going off are next to none. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but it's very minimal. But yeah, that's a good point for safety and for transportation. With this, is like I said, it's not a big deal because you can actually unload this without shooting it. With the next style I'm about to show you, you can't unload them very easily. So that's a good point. Anything else on that, guys? All right. So this is a more traditional style muzzleloader. This is considered a percussion cap. There's also flintlocks and I can't remember what the old are they matchlocks or what's the one? There's actually like a fuse that you light, but this is a percussion cap. So how this works, instead of having an internal hammer, this thing actually is your hammer. You will put what is called a number 11 oh shoot primer on there, and so this is called your nipple. And you actually stick that number 11 primer on there and cock it back. And when this hammer hits that, that's what causes the spark to make it go off. Now you can see that this is coming at an angle into your powder rather than being inline. That's where we get the name inline. So when this goes off, the spark has to travel through this little tube and go down in and ignite your powder. So this is my personal gun. I actually use loose powder with this out of like a powder horn, like in the old Western movies. But you pour your powder in, you take some sort of patch, just usually a cotton type material, put your patch on there, and then you put your ball in, and you're going to ram that down just like that. So here, that is an unloaded gun, and then my line is right there for when it is loaded. Your powder, you need to be consistent with your powder usage, and this goes for each gun. Usually with your inline, you're going to have pelletized powder that usually comes in, 40 to 50 grain increments. Make sure you're being consistent with that. 100 to 150 grains is probably a pretty standard load for muzzleloaders. With this, I'm about 50 or 100 grains of loose powder that I pour in there. These, I do shoot a round ball out of this instead of a sabot, but it's still pretty effective. This is definitely nowhere near as accurate and dependable as an inline muzzleloader, just because it's just not near as fancy and not enough as much technology goes into it. But they are extremely effective. My range on this is about 50 yards. Is what I feel comfortable shooting with it. It's a good gun. They're a lot of fun. With that loose powder, they get very dirty. So make sure you're taking care of these and cleaning them. I use this one a lot for hunter ed, and just from being in the hunter eds, I can see that there's a little light bit of rust on here. So we want to make sure that's clean. So with this gun, how do you unload it? There is no way to get back into this breech at all. So to unload it, you have two options. One, you can shoot it. That's the easiest option. But what happens if there's some moisture in there and you can't get it to go off? Well, they actually make a deal for these ramrods that you can screw into here, and it actually looks like a screw. And you will actually take it and you screw it into the lead ball that you're shooting. You screw into it, and then you have to pull it out. And it's not a very fun process. So try to keep them clean and not have to mess with that. But stuff happens. you get out and it's really moist and stuff, you might be ahead just to, fire it, break it out, clean it, and just try to get it ready to go and reload it for the next time. That's about all I can think of on this. Am I missing anything else, guys?
You killed it, dude.
Okay. And like I said, there's no safeties on these at all. So this hammer is your safety. So this would be considered half cock. That's full cock. So now it's ready to fire. I put my primer on there and then pull the trigger when I'm ready. But
You're letting that hammer down by holding onto the hammer with your thumb, gently squeezing the trigger and letting the hammer down softly.
yep. So once that's in the cock position, you hold it down with your thumb, squeeze the trigger, and let it go down soft. And with these, I would remove that primer off there before I did that, just to be extra safe.
Okay, so we've got a couple questions that came up. Victor asked, hunting on public land like Three Rivers WMA, can you park anywhere? And how far do you recommend traveling before setting up? So that's really going to be area specific. And I would recommend contacting your game warden to kind of figure out exactly what the rules and regulations are. Obviously, on our website, our interactive maps and the PDF maps have designated parking areas there. But there are also possibilities that things like county roads go through a WMA or something similar. You can park on those county roads. It's just be mindful of not blocking traffic. But again, contact your local game warden for that question, and they can give you some more particulars, more importantly, on where not to park.
Yeah, I do have, to just further elaborate on like public land in general. If you're gonna hunt public land and you're wondering how far you should travel into a public land area, I would say if you think you're in there far enough, go farther. And if you do that, then most people that hunt public land, if they can get off a road, they only go in like 75 yards to 100 yards. So, and that's just because, everybody they don't want to walk very far. And so if you could just put in a little bit extra legwork, you'll get to a lot more remote, untouched areas. Three Rivers is huge. And so you're gonna you could walk across a place that no one else has walked across
And
in
many moons.
yes, in many moons. So when you think you've gone enough, go farther. And you're gonna get deeper in there than probably 90% of the population that hunts that place.
Yeah. That's not to say
So
you can't kill one close to the parking area, but most of your successful public land hunters are trying to access areas that are more difficult to access just because it means less pressure. Jacob.
I don't know much about Three Rivers,
Yeah.
but just looking in the regs here, it says hunters and angler camping is allowed within 50 yards of an open roads during WMA hunting season. I would imagine if they're letting you camp there, you're probably able to park, but you just go to the regulations. It has an area contact as well as game board contact. So definitely check with those guys because they're going to know it so much better than me. I've never stepped foot on it one day in my life. They live out there basically. So.
Bet. So Carrie asked that we mentioned putting tape on the tip of the barrel in wet weather. What kind? So like Scotch, box, whatever, electrical. It really doesn't matter. I've used electrical tape in the past just because it's a little bit easier to break, but it's not going to impact the accuracy of your rifle. So all of the gases that are being expelled from the muzzle of that rifle are blasting that tape either off or, depending on what kind of type of tape you use, a hole through that tape, and it won't touch your projectile. So not really any issues with accuracy there. Someone else said you can cover it with the tip of a balloon or a latex glove finger or other latex items, if you know what I mean. I've seen that before. It's kind of an interesting use for those products. Someone said I was told to store my muzzleloader in my truck after I come out of the woods instead of bringing it into my home due to change in temperature. Yeah, so that's kind of a back of your mind tip to use. If you bring your muzzleloader in from it where it's really cold and you bring it into your house where it's warm, it's going to condensate. Condensation is going to build up on that metal, which it can build up inside of your barrel or inside of that breech, causing your powder to get wet. So that is a good tip. Obviously, depending on where you live, I'm not sure. I personally would leave my muzzleloader in my truck. But so don't call me if somebody breaks into your truck and steals your muzzleloader. But yeah, I mean, just be mindful of the conditions that you're putting that weapon in. Anybody else have any questions?
Someone made a comment saying, I find cold barrel shots more consistent for accuracy as well as brushing the barrel after every shot. So that would be accurate, I would say.
They get dirty fast for sure.
Right. Any more questions about anything specific to like the muzzleloader that you have that you're wanting to hunt with or considering purchasing?
Doesn't even have to be a muzzleloader question.
On the tape thing, I just want to bring up one point. You're taping it to keep moisture out, not keep the bullet in. So don't go. I can see if you took a lot of duct tape and put on there, you could cause some issues. But a very light layer of tape is what Dallas is talking about. Not 50, not a whole roll of duct tape on the barrel.
Yeah, just one little piece.
Yeah.
Bryce asked if I'm new to an area, who's a good person to get with for public land, show where the entryways are, et cetera, et cetera. So Jacob had already kind of brought that up a little bit. In our reg book, underneath every single WMA that we have, there's contact information. That area contact is going to be for the wildlife management, staff that work there. So an area biologist, they're going to know that place like the back of their hand. So that would be the first call I would make. The second call, if they don't answer, would be to that county game warden. Most of those guys know that place really, really well, especially if they've been there for any amount of time at all. So those would be the two people that I would call if I were new to an area and wanted to get some information on the public land hunting. You can get a lot of information just on the website by looking at those interactive maps. It'll tell you what roads are open, what roads are closed, where entries are, stuff like that. But at least those area biologists can kind of lead you into a good direction or a good place to at least start.
Yeah, and save those guys' number in your phone too, because if you're out there and you see somebody doing something stupid, which there's a chance you do, it's good to have those numbers handy so you can report that. So we appreciate you guys, reporting that kind of stuff, and that helps us, keep the area safe, keep looking good.
There's also we've mentioned our WMA interactive maps. So there's an app on your phone. It's called Field Maps, and it's like ArcGIS Field Maps. ArcGIS Field Maps, and if you go on there, you can click continue without signing in, so you don't have to make an account or anything, but you just search ODWC WMA, and that interactive map will come up on your phone right there. You can zoom in. We have all the biologists designate parking areas. It's all labeled for you, and so if you're out there, that would be the best place. If you can't get a hold of a biologist and you really need to know something, that would be, and if you have service, that would be the best best tool to use in that situation. The app is called, here, I'm going to type it in the chat, ArcGIS Field Maps.
All right, Jacob, here's the number one question with all these that we do. What is the rule for retrieving your deer if it runs onto private property?
So you have to have private landowner permission to go onto property. So just because you shoot a deer doesn't give you access to go onto any property you want to. Oh, sorry. A guy from Oregon is calling me right now. Let me get off that. Can y'all still see me? Okay. Yeah, so you have to have permission. It is a very good idea to try to make those contacts before season. I have found that landowners are usually pretty willing to let you go look for stuff. If you shoot it, they want you to get those deer. It definitely helps if you're not calling them at 11 o'clock at night, though. So try to, best thing to do is hunt off the fence lines. Get away from the property lines. But if you can't, just try to have contact with those landowners. Say, hey, I'm a landowner, or I'm the hunter here. I'll be hunting this property. I just want to introduce you. I was like, I hope nothing runs on your place, but if it does, I just wanted to have a initial contact with you. And usually people are pretty friendly to that. That's another thing on that topic, Dallas, is carcass disposal.
Yep.
Do not take your carcass and go dump it on the county road. If you shoot a deer, you take it to a processor, that's great. They will usually dispose of it for you. If you are processing it yourself, you cannot legally dump that within a quarter mile of a water source, residence, or a roadway. So if you have property, you have a canyon or something, you can put it in where it's not going to be a nuisance for somebody, that's fine. If you live in town in a subdivision or in an apartment, you can 100% bag that up in a trash bag and put it in your trash service. It's completely legal. That's one of the main calls I get every year is people dumping deer. it makes hunters look really bad, and it's just not very tasteful. So have some respect and do that properly.
A quiet group today.
Because we've covered everything so thoroughly.
I learned what ML means, so that's cool.
Yeah. So when you're referring to muzzleloader, you can just abbreviate it and it's ML,
Yeah,
especially
that's what the cool kids do.
muzzleloader class. And I say, go get the muzzleloader for demonstration, but I say ML. Context clues, man.
I thought you were having a stroke on your phone. I didn't know what you're doing. What's an ML?
Well, if anybody has any questions, now would be the time to type them in. Again, it doesn't have to refer to this. It can refer to anything that has to do with the wildlife
There you
department
go.
as a whole. Yeah. So Renee says, have there been any more cases of CWD since last year? So no, we have not had any additional cases of CWD pop up, just those initial 2 confirmed cases, one in Woodward County and one in Texas County. So no additional cases there. If you're interested in having your deer tested for chronic wasting disease, you can always drop off a deer head in one of our freezers. They're located primarily all on the western side of the state where we have had instances of chronic wasting disease. So if that's something you're interested in, call us. We can get you directed to those freezers. Their locations are also located on the website. So if you just search CWD up in the top right corner of the website, that'll take you to that page and answer all the questions you have. But yeah, good news there. No additional cases. We still got
Make sure you're matching your powder and your bullets to your gun too. Most of your muzzle loaders are 50, 54, 40 caliber. Make sure that the ammunition you're getting and the powder you're getting is matches that gun. I have seen people, they make pelletized powder, just like a little puck you put in there, and sometimes those are in 100-gram increments, sometimes they're in 50-gram increments. So make sure that you're matching those to whatever you're shooting.
So on that note, say there you have 350s, and so you put 150 grams of powder in there. If you put more or less powder in there, it will have a different effect. It will kick harder or and shoot the bullet faster versus less powder. So if you're taking somebody like a small child or whatever outside or out to shoot a muzzleloader, be consistent or considerate of that aspect, and that it kicks pretty hard, and so you need to set. You can't switch the powder loads and expect the bullet to fly the same way as well. And so, am I on par with this, Jacob?
Yeah, and if you have a bunch of 50-grain pucks and you accidentally buy 100-grain pucks and you put 3 100-grain pucks in there instead of 3 50-grain pucks in there, you are going to regret your life decisions.
Yeah,
you will regret that. So make sure you match all that stuff up.
So another good one somebody just asked is, can you speak on aging bucks for harvest? Are we still striving for older bucks and letting the young bucks grow? So yeah, I mean, there's a lot. You'll see a ton of stuff on social media or on the internet about, aging bucks or, especially to a specific year class. I'll tell you right now that it's really not all that accurate unless you have a whole lot of pictures throughout the years of a specific buck that, has a very unique identifying mark. Aging to a specific age class is incredibly difficult and for most people very inaccurate. But what you can do is just kind of put those deer into age groups. So instead of saying this is a 1.5-year-old deer or a 2.5-year-old deer, you can say this is a young deer. That it's a lot easier based on what you're seeing. So like a young deer, their legs are going to appear really long for their body. They'll have a skinny neck. They just look like they're young. A mature deer, on the other hand, you're going to know it when you see it. Big, thick body. Their legs will kind of appear short for their body. A sagging belly or swaying back. There are a lot of different things to kind of look for there. But are we still striving for older bucks and letting young bucks grow? That's something that you as a hunter have to make a decision on what it is that you're after. Obviously, I would like to see the age of bucks harvest, increase up into that 3.5, 4.5, 5.5-year-old time frame. But there's nothing wrong with killing a young buck. that saying that you're talking about, hunters in the know that young bucks grow, is something that we kind of coined just to have a little bit more focus on harvest at maturity. So it's not going to decimate a deer population to shoot a young buck, but it's something to consider. If you want to grow big deer, you can't shoot them when they're young.
I will say on that, there are way more young deer that antler wise you would say are big than you would ever think. I had a guy call me today. He's like, "Yeah, I only shoot 8-point deer." And I'm like, "Well, you know, an 8-point could be a 6-year-old or it could be a 1.5-year-old. You know, it just depends." So the number of points has nothing to do with the age of the deer.
Correct. Ooh, here's a good one from Steve that we didn't even think about. Remember to remove the ramrod out of your barrel if you're doing a quick reload. So let's say you shoot
True.
and you miss or you hit a deer and it's still standing there and you're saying, "Oh boy, we got to get another shot in it." So you're not really thinking about your process on reloading again. You're just trying to get it done as quick as possible, and you forget to pull your ramrod out. That would be an interesting experience to have that happen. I can't say I've done it. But I can sure understand how it could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of old Western movies have that in it.
Yep.
Out of ammo, but they still got a ramrod left.
We don't advise doing that.
No.
Please don't
Yeah.
do that.
Please don't.
Western for
Yeah.
us.
Okay.
Okie doke. So good. Uh-oh. Also, make sure you get a good seat on the primer. I didn't last year and missed a good one. Yeah, very good. And Jacob, if you're if you're loading in the muzzle loader and you haven't fired it and you're going to keep it in there all season, is it a good idea to every once in a while just pack that bullet back down in there?
It wouldn't hurt. Ideally, your bullet's going to pack tight enough it shouldn't move, but it definitely wouldn't hurt to. If that bullet's moving around in the barrel, you got bigger problems. It should be very tight fitting. You don't want any gap around it. But yeah, if you get in a car wreck or something with it in your car, yeah, that would be very advisable.
Also check your sight at that point.
Yeah.
Resight your gun in general. Okay. 5 minutes. So, okay. So I do want to let you guys know that I record all these and it's going to take me about 24 hours, but I will send the recording back to the group that signed up for this. And then it'll be posted on our YouTube channel, Outdoor Oklahoma YouTube channel under Learn to Hunt playlist. So if you need to go over something again, you guys can just refer back to this video at any time. I thank you guys for your participation today. Lots of good questions. And the next one will be deer rifle, and you'll get to see all of us again. All right. Y'all have a good week. Happy hunting.
Get to work, Jacob.
Yeah, I got to finish washing my truck. Let's say